Okay, welcome to the second episode of Discover and Develop. We're going to get straight into it. So, topic of today is connecting to yourself. So, a big discrepancy, or let's say a big disconnect from why I believe people really struggle with self-discipline is because they get consumed by everything external to themselves. And they look outward for their happiness, they look outward for their pleasures. And unfortunately, we lose that connection with ourselves. We start to lose our identity. We don't really understand ourselves that much. So it's not really an information problem. You all know what to do. It's an implementation problem. And when you're so disconnected from yourself, but you have all these outer connections to things and people around you, often you follow the behaviors of those people. You get consumed by what the environment around you is currently doing or happening. Like, let's say people are drinking around you. More often than not, you're going to drink. People are eating poor foods, ordering a pizza tonight. You're going to do those things as well. And when you're so deeply disconnected, that is when you are really going to struggle to gather any form of discipline that allows you to get what you're essentially going after, not just in body, but also in life. Anything that you essentially want to change about yourself, if you're not understanding why these behaviors and why these actions are being implemented, I do think you need to take a look within rather than looking externally to what's going on around you. Because as I discussed with stress last week, when you're looking at things that happen to you or things that happen around you, we only are affected by what we give power to. Okay. So if you're giving power to your mind, then your mind's always going to have power over you if you allow it. Now, if you imagine that every single thing you stress about is a thought, okay, every single thing you think about is the only thing that can stress you out. So people have heart attacks and get diseases from too much stress. But imagine that you're gaining all of that just from thought alone. Now, it doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be stressed, but it does go to show that if we learn to manage how we perceive things, we connect with ourselves on a deeper level, we understand how to manage our minds, then we might have a better chance, definitely will have a better chance of having higher levels of discipline, having less stress, less overwhelm, less anxiety, less depression, which means when we actually act and implement the things that we do know, we'll do it with more conviction. The problem is we always feel like we need more information. We're not, we don't have an information problem. We have an implementation problem due to many different factors. So we're going to take a little deep dive into this now. So first and foremost, what is connection? So it's a relationship in which a person or thing is linked or associated with something else. So our connections with other people, ourselves, and obviously our external environment, our homes, where we go on holiday. It's how we connect with things. It's how we look at things. It's how we're linked and associated to these particular things. Okay. So when you're looking at reconnecting with yourself, some people will really struggle to do it in their own environment. Okay. So like being stuck at home, some people just get caught into the autopilot state that most of us are stuck on. But if you are really wanting to take control of many things in your life and you want to action new behaviors and you want to implement different things, are you really putting yourself into the places and environments and the headspace of the best way to do that? Because if you're not deeply connected to yourself, and if you're so connected to everything else outside of you, that's when you're going to get lost. And that's when you're never going to understand why you do win at certain things and why you don't win at certain things. And we have to learn that, when we fail and when we don't do things very well, if we don't learn from those things, then more often than not, we can deem it as failure. But failure isn't something that is there if you continue to try and you continue to keep pushing forward and continue to learn from the mistakes that you do make. Now, self-connection is the process of being in touch with the worthiness and wholeness of self, regardless of form of experience you are having. These forms could be feelings, thoughts, expectations, beliefs, or attitudes. Okay, so this self-connection process that we go through and actually understanding ourselves, we have to understand where our expectations come from, where these beliefs come from, where our attitude comes from in the morning. or when certain things happen to us, do we allow certain things to really change our perspective of our day, from going from a bad moment to a bad day to bad weeks to bad months to bad years and so on? So we actually have power when it comes down to connection with ourselves. If we're understanding why we do certain things, what our triggers are, and how to kind of work on these things, rather than self-sabotage, you actually connect with yourself again. You're able to be able to understand your feelings, understand your thoughts, understand why you had these expectations and whether you can change them, why you have certain beliefs, whether it came from childhood, whether it came from environmental circumstances, whether it happened from school, and the attitude you now build. Who are you surrounding yourself with? And are you someone who can really start to have a deeper connection with yourself, so you can actually start to understand where it is that you potentially need to work on the most? And a lot of the time, once you start to have that connection with yourself, you'll start to see the benefits of, understanding you in terms of how your identity has got to where it is, because we are what we identify ourselves as. If I say to myself, I'm lazy, I'm someone who doesn't have much discipline, I hate the mornings, I'm going to be every single one of those things because those are my beliefs. Once I say that, that becomes a part of my identity. I'm a person that doesn't go to watch rugby matches, so I don't go watch rugby matches. It becomes a part of my identity. I love watching football, becomes part of my identity. I love going out on the weekends and having a drink, becomes my identity. I love getting home from work and sitting on the sofa, becomes my identity. All these things that you identify yourself as, and the things that you actually like and value, irrespective of whether you think you value it, things we do consistently are the things that we actually value. So you actually have to consider all these things. But without connection and without actually understanding ourselves and going on a kind of quest for deeper connection with ourselves, it's really difficult to actually understand why we do what we do. So when you do what feels hard, you learn that you have the ability to do hard things. You don't just stumble upon courage, you cultivate it. It's like when people say you've got amazing willpower. No one's born with willpower, and certainly no one's born better than anyone else. We may have better skill sets, a better physiology for certain things. Okay, some people can become athletes because physiologically they're almost built for it, and some people have to work harder. But hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. And it goes to show that in every single thing that you do, when you're doing the hard things and you're consistently doing that, you're already teaching your body that you can do that. You're teaching your mind that you can do hard, difficult things. It's like when most people join the program, they don't think they're going to ever climb a mountain, run a 5K, do Tough Mudder, or go into the gym for the first time. They believe that these things are out of their depths, out of the depths of their skill set and their talents and what they believe they can do as a person. And all of a sudden, once you start to do these hard things, you're like, oh, like I can do this. You learn that you have the ability to do it. And then you're like, right, okay, it gives you more courage, gives you more belief, changes your attitude, and you start to say, okay, maybe I can do a bit more. Maybe I can push myself that a little bit extra. Maybe I can run from a 5K to a 10K. Oh, I've run a 10K now. Can I do 15? Can I do half a marathon? Can I go on to do a marathon? You start to question your abilities. You start to question, okay, I've really suppressed my potential over a very long time. And when you start to really exert, the courage, and you exert the kind of effort that it requires to be able to push yourself above and beyond what you thought the expectations were, what you thought your potential was, then the belief comes. And when you shift your beliefs, you get rid of those bullshit stories, and you start to understand that you do have more in you. You just wasn't doing what feels hard beforehand. That's when you'll make a huge difference in everything that you do. So disconnection and loneliness is normal when you're growing. It's actually a good sign because you're becoming more closely connected to yourself. Most people think that when they're alone, that they're lonely. The problem with that is sometimes we need time and space to ourselves to actually create that connection. But when you're constantly on the lookout for that dopamine hit, you want that pleasure, you don't want to feel like you're lonely, then spending time alone doesn't become something that you do. Without spending time alone, you can't actually connect with yourself. And then there's the other half where people who do spend time alone do feel lonely. And then rather than connecting with themselves, they do stupid things like scrolling on their phones, watching TV, watching really depressive soap episodes. They don't do things that bring about good feelings, and they don't spend time asking themselves questions or even trying to understand where their thoughts are coming from. They just allow the thoughts to sit in their mind. And this is something that really runs deep with a lot of people, because if you imagine what kind of cripples your progress, what kind of keeps you into a state of paralysis, most often driven by fear and stress and things that are external to you. But everything that you attach to those are thoughts. And if we can look at that from just step outside the box for a second and say, okay, if you could imagine you was your ghost and you were standing with you your whole life, but you understood what was going on in that person's head. You understand what was going on in your head, you physically. Okay, so imagine you had someone who is an invisible you and you have yourself physically. That person doesn't have fear. Imagine how they would think, and imagine what they would do as another person or your twin to the actions that you're actually doing right now. Imagine like what you could do without fear. I don't know if I put that in the right way or not, but just imagine that, you had a person next to you who you could be. And the person, I'm not saying that anyone is wrong for who they are now, because we're all going through our individual journeys, and no one should ever feel like they're stuck or they should feel like, that they're not good enough. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying that when you connect deeper and when you actually understand that when you're spending time alone, it should be spent trying to, especially if you don't understand yourself very well, trying to understand yourself on a deeper level and really trying to connect with what is going well, why things aren't potentially going well, and how we can change it. But without any kind of strategic plan, without asking yourself those questions, like journaling. If you get a good journal, it asks really good questions. You start to think differently from when you're just having thoughts in your head. And this is why it's so important to have that time and space to yourself. So self-discipline is a skill. And like I said to you guys, sorry, one second, I should put my laptop here. Like I said to you, when you're connecting with yourself, it becomes an easier process. You can make it simple. Like I said here, building it is simple. Just make small personal promises. So for one, when you go out with your friends, say, I'm not going to have a drink tonight. And then you practice keeping those promises. The problem that we have is we often say, I'm going to start this on Monday. I'm going to do this today. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm not going to drink. I'm going to get to bed on time tonight. I'm going to wake up at this time tomorrow. I'm going to go do this at work. I need to get this done today. And you reel off all these things. And what happens is you create a big disconnect with trusting yourself. You don't trust yourself to do all these things because you said you was going to do it and you didn't. And then when you make a huge list of all these things that you need to do, often you miss out the ones that are for you. You do the necessities, you go to work, you sort out the kids, you have to go food shopping, and you have to cook for everyone, you have to eat, whether that's good food or bad food. Well, I shouldn't label it as bad food, but foods that aren't necessarily good for you. That's when you lose the connection with yourself. You don't trust yourself no more because you don't stick to the personal promises that you make to yourself. So self-discipline isn't just driven by the actions that you uphold. It's actually learning how to trust yourself. And most people really don't trust themselves to do what they said they would. And that's part of the problem. It's like I always say, I don't practice what I preach. I preach what I practice. Because when you're I never really want to be someone who is a fraud. So I would never give advice for things I don't do myself. Now, don't get me wrong. Do I struggle? Absolutely. Do I fuck up sometimes? All the time. But at the same time, we're fucking human. And when it comes down to disciplining yourself and feeling good about yourself, you can't feel good about yourself if you don't trust yourself to stick to the personal promises that you make to yourself. So self-discipline comes from keeping to those little personal promises that you create for yourself and actually going with them. If you can't stick to them, you're going to lose trust within yourself. Now, focus on the little things you can do instead of being paralyzed with overwhelm. Most people will look at all the things they have to do and they look at the end result. As I say to you guys, your vision gets distorted when you look and focus on the end result. You need to focus on the daily steps, okay? You can create your goals, then you need to create micro goals and micro steps in order how to get to the micro goals. Once you achieve a micro goal, then it gives you more confidence. You gain momentum. You start to feel a million times better about what you're doing. The problem that we do have is that we overwhelm ourselves with how much we have to do over a certain period of time, rather than understanding that everything that we do anyway is a step-by-step process. Your brain actually can't focus on more than one thing in one given setting. So when people say, I'm a multitasker, no, you're not. You're a good juggler. You juggle tasks, going from one thing to another, causing yourself overwhelm. So if you believe you're a multitasker, if you believe you're someone that could do more, loads of different things at once, you're bullshitting yourself. You're probably just a person who's extremely overwhelmed that gets a lot of stuff done in a very stressful way. The problem with that is the more stress that you build, again, you're not actually doing things from a place where you're happy or joyful or excited. You're just doing it from a place of fear, and you're doing it from a place of overwhelm, and you're doing it from a place where you're probably going to exert yourself so much full of stress that you're just constantly going to feel burnt out, and that's when it becomes difficult. So look at whether you believe in yourself, because we all wallow in self-doubt a lot. And like I said to you guys before, when we wake up in the morning, more often than not, you're just going to feel negative. You're going to feel like the whole world is on top of you. You're going to feel like, what of all these tasks I've got to do today? And it's like you almost have to get through the day. And rather than saying, I get to do all these things, you're like, I have to do this and I have to do that. And your attitude becomes very different. Now, you will know how it feels when you're expressing gratitude. The problem is that when we wake up in the morning, we roll into the stress of the day. So self-doubt already kicks in. And when you win the morning, and I don't say you have to wake up at 5 a.m. and do all these things. You don't have to do that. But when you wake up, you need to wake up at a time that gives you time and space. Okay. Gather your thoughts in the morning and have all the little things ready that you know. Let's say, for example, something I do in the morning at the moment, either gratitude or a perspective shift. When I'm experiencing negative thoughts, I'll write them down and then I'll ask my brain for a different thought. Maybe more than 4, 5, 6, 7 thoughts. I'll give myself, 9 positive thoughts for every single negative thought. Because once you start to train your mind to do that, you start to overcome that self-doubt very quickly. Then we need to look at learning a lesson and do better next time instead of beating yourself up. People fuck up, people are human, and the problem is we always are too harsh on ourselves. We're ultra critical. We feel like we're taking a million steps backwards, and what happens to our behaviors. And when you don't journal and when you don't actually understand what's gone on in that day, sometimes you can be really harsh on yourself. And what I mean by that is when you've actually had a really tough day, highly emotional, you've had a lot of stress at work, you come home, your house is the best, you've got all these things to do, and you haven't done half the task for yourself. Sometimes those days are going to come. But if you're not actually writing things down and actually understanding how much you actually do, you're constantly going to feel like you're in a negative state because of how you're perceiving things. But when you actually write stuff down, you understand your thoughts a lot better. You ask yourself good questions. You connect with yourself on a deeper level. You'll stop beating yourself up because you actually give yourself a break and understand how much you actually do. Something I struggled with as of late is when I don't reflect, I forget how much my body's been through, how much trauma has happened over the last 12 weeks since my accident. Like I fucking nearly died. And I'm looking at myself in the gym thinking, I don't want to take my jumper off right now because I don't feel like myself. And I'm forcing myself to do it just because I need to understand that this isn't the end. It could have been the end 12 weeks ago, but it's not. And if I focus on all the negative things about me at the moment, then I'm just going to be in a place where I'm working hard to get away from negative feelings. when I really should be working from a place that I'm blessed to be here, and I'm blessed to be able to walk into a gym, and blessed to be able to train, and blessed to be able to work on my mindset and work on my body, and actually understand that my whole perception of life has changed. And if I don't reflect, I miss all that out. And that's why it's so important that you have to do these exercises to be able to connect with yourself on a deeper level. Otherwise, you get sucked back into this westernized world where most people focus on all the wrong things. And the beauty in life is definitely not the way the Western world behaves. And let me put it that way. So when, and it can really sound like a lot of airy fairy bullshit sometimes when people talk about this, but maybe the difference and the missing answers are coming from where you're not doing this. And this is something that we can really take a lot from. So push yourself to take action instead of avoiding what you need to do. Easier said than done this. But how do we push ourselves to take action? So I'm going to give you an example. The other day, I was sitting at home and I felt like doing absolutely fuck all. Didn't want to go gym. Didn't want to get my laptop up. Didn't want to do the program updates. Didn't want to do the Zoom, or I didn't want to do my self-development that day. And I sat there and I gave myself half an hour, set a timer on my phone, put half an hour on it. And in that half an hour, I was talking a good game to myself. I was like, okay, what are the minimums I want to do today? So I wrote down the minimums of what I needed to do, wanted to do, and what I'd be fairly satisfied with. And then I wrote down the maximums, what I potentially could do if I was to switch my attitude around. And then just writing those things down shifted everything for me. And I didn't even need to wait until that half an hour timer was over. I just got clear on what needed to get done. I'd done the minimums first. I still had a bit more energy to do the rest, and I got most things done. But if I didn't do that little exercise, if I didn't understand my thoughts and what needed to get done, and allow myself a moment to be negative and be able to do an exercise, actually change the attitude, then I would have sat there, felt like that all day. So something just as small as that, anything reflective, anything where you give yourself the opportunity to express how you're feeling to someone, to something, on something, you will undoubtedly feel a million times better. But we build that internal pressure. Like a pressure cooker, what happens if it overcooks? The bloody thing pops off. It can't take it. And that's exactly what we're like. So if we're not allowing ourselves to express how we're feeling to someone, write it down or something, everything stays inside, which means you bottle all that energy up, that negative energy, and sooner or later, you're going to react somehow. It's going to come out in anger, frustration. It's going to come out in tears, emotions, and it's going to come out in a way you don't really want it to come out. So just give yourself the opportunity to do these little exercises. And surround yourself with positive people instead of hanging out with people who gossip and complain or have a lot of negative actions. The problem that we have is when we associate fun as alcohol, going out to the pubs, going out to clubs, going out to bars, we're constantly going to associate fun as that thing because we haven't found anything else to do. We don't necessarily need to meet up with people and go for a drink. We can just meet up with people, go for a coffee, go for a bite to eat, go to the cinema, go to bowling, go to do any form of activities that doesn't require you to do something that's detrimental to your health. And then when you change your associations, it's like, what do we associate sitting down on the sofa with a cup of tea? What do we associate our beds with? Going to sleep. What do we associate our sinks with? Brushing our teeth or washing our hands. Everything has an association. If you can learn to change your associations with your actions and what you do on the weekends and what you do day to day, then you'll slowly start to see a big shift and change in how positive your mindset can be. But the problem is we don't find people who, or let's say we don't even influence others to try and change their actions. So we get sucked back into what everyone else does. And usually what everyone else does isn't something that is actually fun, it's actually rather disappointing. And that's what our actions feel like sometimes. It's more disappointing than anything else. So choosing your environment and who you connect with outside of you will actually change how you connect with yourself. And you can do more fulfilling things on the weekends and the evenings when you've got time, rather than doing the things that you're currently doing. So ask yourself, rather than saying all the time that it won't work, what if it all does work out? What if what I'm going after all works out? I get the job I'm after. I start a new business. I get the body that I want. What if I'm able to live a life that actually makes me genuinely happy, meet someone who has the same values as me, be in an environment where people lift me up, be in a new home, be whatever it might be. What if it does all work out? Why are we so good at thinking about the worst case scenario? Why are we good at telling ourselves that it won't work out? Why are we not good at telling ourselves that it will work out, that everything I'm going after, I'm going to get? Because how do you build that conviction? When we're so disconnected from ourselves, we will always tell ourselves it won't work, because we're always going to find fault with ourselves. And most people who don't connect to themselves, you'll actually see, are the people that are most negative. They push their insecurities onto others. They react outwardly to other people, but they're just basically expressing their own insecurities and everything else as a reaction to other people. You probably do the same sometimes when you're feeling insecure and not happy within yourself. Your actions and behaviors aren't you as a person. It's a reaction to what's going on in your life. So this is why it becomes really easy to tell yourself it won't work, because we're so disconnected from ourselves and not understanding why we're doing certain things, that we don't operate from a place where we feel like we're excited about life. We just operate from a place where we're feeling low. And of course, it's not going to work if you're feeling like that. But sometimes our thoughts really do genuinely manifest into what happens in our lives. Okay. And you'll probably know it from how you feel sometimes. If you look at your life when you're feeling really negative, what kind of people were you around? What kind of relationship did you have? What did your body look like? What did your diet look like? What was your sleep looking like? What was you doing for work? Ask yourself, what was it like then? And then if you were to start looking at how much you've progressed until now, think about how much you've developed in your life, how much you've grown. Because that person you was yesterday cannot be you today. The person that you was 3 months ago can definitely still not be you today. You always grow and develop into a new person each day. The problem is a lot of people stagnate and they stay the same. And that's when they feel like they've never got anywhere. So if you're actually looking at everything now from a negative perspective, just see, can I change my perspective on, rather than saying it won't work, what if it all does work out? So start creating the life you want today, instead of simply wishing it was different. We can't wish we had things, people who have like that victim mindset over like a victim mindset will be like, it's okay for that person. It's all right for some. They're lucky they've got that. It's not lucky. No one's lucky they've got anything. It's fortunate. They worked hard somewhere along the lines. And most people often see the result of where someone's got to, the outcome. The problem that we all have is we don't see the hard work, the blood, the sweat, the tears. When people say, oh, I want a body like hers, or I want a body like his, can you make me like this? And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, like, you want me to help you get to this, but at the same time, are you willing to work out 5 to 7 days a week, go out and do 12 to 15,000 steps a day, wake up at the same time they do, eat the same food that they do, say no to alcohol on the weekends, and say yes to going out and just buying good food and eating that 7 days a week? Do you want to do all those things? Do you want to go into the gym every single session and work your fucking socks off, have a 10 out of 10 session every single time? Do you want to focus on recovery, pay money that you've invested into yourself, into a coach? Do you want to pay money into recovery, going into whatever it might be with regards to physiotherapy, osteopathy, whatever it might be? Do you want to do all these things? Because then you can go look like that person. But if you don't want to do all those things, then that's when you are never going to get to what that person has. And this is why we're always looking at the surface level of what people look like, what they have and what they do. So rather than actually wishing you could be like someone else, have what someone else has, or wishing your life was different, start creating it today. Start with those little actions that are really going to help you. If you want to get a new job, start making a new CV. Write the first paragraph. If you want to change your body, focus on your food alone. Don't even focus on the gym. If you want to focus on making better decisions, start connecting with yourself. Start understanding why you're making the current decisions that you are. Once you start to do all those things, it multiplies. Eating becomes a habit. Connecting yourself becomes a habit. You start making better decisions. Those decisions become more consistent. Your body starts to shift and change. Your mind starts to shift and change. It all works like clockwork. And if one thing goes wrong, it could be a potential thing, another thing goes wrong, then another thing, and another thing. So just like the compounding effect of good actions will progress and get better, it's the same with the other one. Remember Tony's 4 squares of success. We've got self-belief and certainty. We've got potential, actions, and results. It can go around in a good spiral. It can go around in a bad spiral. And lastly, how do we reconnect with ourselves? We spoke about a few things: perspective shifts, morning journaling, evening journaling. But here's a few. So we can sit in silence. Don't scroll on your phone. You can do it without listening to music, without doing anything other than listening to your heartbeat, your breath. Practice a guided meditation every evening. It doesn't need to be something that you're doing yourself. Practice, go taking a walk without your headphones, actually listen to the sounds of nature. When you're alone, try and do something that is not filling the time and space. Just allow yourself to connect, reconnect with yourself. Because when we are on our own, imagine how many times you just go and pick up your phone, open up Instagram, or go into the cupboard needlessly, mindless eating, flicking on the TV because you're bored. When was the last time that you just sat and was within your own company? So the goal for you guys after watching this is to reconnect with yourselves. Understand your decisions, your actions, what you do day to day. Understand yourselves on a deeper level, because I'm pretty sure when you start to do that, you'll actually start to see the benefits of everything that you do day to day. You'll start to see why certain things don't happen. You'll start to see why things do happen. And when you start to reconnect with yourselves, you bring a high level of presence to what you do. You undoubtedly make better decisions. Better decisions lead to better implementation. Better implementation leads to a higher level of discipline. And a higher level of discipline leads to a higher level of results in everything in your life. So there you go. Go reconnect with yourselves. Give yourself the time and space. And let me know what you thought of that soon.